It's one of the most remote places on Earth, and one of the most mysterious. For over 1,000 years, Easter Island was home to a thriving civilization, until ecological disaster nearly wiped them out. What happened here?
You can see 2, 3, 4 holes of different size.
How did the people survive?
Dark days for Easter Island.
Very dark.
And why did they build these amazing monuments? I've come to the South Pacific to explore the many mysteries of this remote place.
Welcome to Easter Island.
My life as an archaeologist has taken me to the four corners of the earth, searching to unlock the mysteries of our ancient ancestors. My name is Michael Arbuthnot, and this is Secret Worlds. What would happen if you put 100 people on an island and left them there for 1,200 years?
Welcome to Easter Island.
That's what I've come to find out. 2,000 miles west of Chile lies a 14-mile-long speck that wasn't even marked on maps until the 18th century, when European explorers first discovered the island. Until then, people lived here in total isolation. Their devastating fall and modern rebirth is one of the most amazing survival stories ever told, and holds crucial lessons for all of us on this island we call Earth.
The people who live here call themselves Rapa Nui. They've actually been here for well over 1,000 years. In that time, they have survived some of the greatest challenges faced by any culture on Earth. And they also built some of the world's most unforgettable monuments.
Most people have heard of Easter Island because of these stone faces. They're called moai. Gigantic figures, some 20 or 30 feet tall, carved out of volcanic rock. And scattered across this tiny island are hundreds of them. The story of the people who built these statues is an incredible tale of strength, suffering, and loss. Yet like the moai, the Rapa Nui have survived and still live here today. The entire population of Easter Island lives here in its only town, Hangaroa.
Easter Island is now a part of Chile. There's about 2,000 Rapa Nui here and an equal number of Chileans.
My first impression is that the Rapa Nui are still coming to grips with the modern world. Motorists share the pavement with horseback riders. You see traditional craft shops sitting right next to internet cafes. Living here is a balancing act.
This is the farmer's market in the village of Hangaroa. And you can see they've got lettuce, cucumber, beets, dogs.
This is banana from Easter Island.
From Easter Island?
Yes.
Rapa Nui, producto.
We're actually in a subtropical climate, but you still kind of get the tropical fruits, pineapples and whatnot. And that was how people were able to sustain themselves for 1,000 years here, is that you can grow stuff on Rapa Nui.
But what they can grow is limited. Farmers raise only a small amount of produce, and the daily catch at the fish market sells out fast. Everything else needs to be shipped in from the mainland. It can be a precarious existence, but the struggle for survival has been a part of Rapa Nui life for over 1,000 years. Today, Easter Island is mostly barren hillside. Too rocky for farming or for grazing animals. There are few trees, few native plants, not even many insects or birds. But it wasn't always like this.
This is Anakena Beach. Legend has it that the first Polynesian explorers landed here sometime between 400 and 800 AD, but that's still debated. What we know, though, is that when they landed, the island was very different than it is today. It was covered in trees. How do we know that? Thanks to some very clever archaeology.
Easter Island was formed by volcanic eruptions, the most recent only 3,000 years ago. Today, These volcanoes are dormant, but they've left behind intriguing clues about the island's past.
This is the west side of the island.
Sergio Rapu was born here and has spent much of his life piecing together the mysteries of the island's past.
I feel like you're walking me into certain death here, Sergio. What kind of rock is this?
Well, here you had all volcanic rocks, Pahoehoe and type lava, just like what you find in Hawaiian Islands, for example.
A few years back, a local fisherman was climbing over these same rocks and made an amazing discovery.
You see this red line here?
Yeah.
That is an ancient soil that was covered by volcanic eruptions. You can see 2, 3, 4 holes of different size. So the lava of 3,000 years ago came down onto that soil and burned it. And on that soil, there were a lot of trees. And the volcanic eruptions toppled some of those trees, but the bigger one remained cooling the lavas and left that mold that you can see there.
So this is a fallen palm tree, totally encased in lava.
That's right, and you can even see detail of the bark.
Yeah, that's incredible. So how old was this palm tree?
We don't know the exact age, but we know the age of the lava flow, which is 3,000 years ago. It suggests that before man arrived, this island was completely covered with forest.
Well, how do we know that it wasn't a volcano that wiped out all the trees during historic times?
This eruption took place in only one little spot of the island. And we didn't have a volcanic event after 3,000 years ago.
These palm casts aren't the only evidence that the island was once covered with trees. Other studies have found ancient pollen and fossilized seeds, proving that when humans first got here, there were at least 6 species of trees on the island. Which leads me to an even bigger question. How did the first people get here? Easter Island was not an easy place to find. It's 2,000 miles west from South America and 2,500 miles east of the closest major island, Tahiti. That's a lot of ocean. For decades, archaeologists believed that the Rapa Nui were descended from the South American Incas. But DNA evidence now proves that the island's original settlers were Polynesian, the leading edge of one of the most incredible feats of exploration in human history. 1,000 years before Columbus, Polynesian explorers found and colonized every major island in a 2 million square mile area called the Polynesian Triangle. Sometime between 400 and 800 AD, they reached Easter Island. How did they pull this off? To learn how they colonized the South Pacific, I head down to the Rapa Nui Outrigger Club to meet up with native islander Hugo Teeve.
Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Hugo's friend, Tu, has been painting him with traditional Rapa Nui symbols.
Tu is giving me power with the symbols of the ancestors.
So these are Polynesian symbols?
The symbols help the paddlers tap into their native power, what the Rapa Nui call mana.
You need to have the same power and the feeling.
I have a feeling I'm going to need some extra power looking at you guys. But this is something that just because I'm painted, it doesn't mean I got the power. It's like I have to channel my power through the symbols. Bring it on.
Polynesians have long used outrigger canoes like these for fishing, or in this case, racing. The outrigger keeps the thin, 6-man canoe stable enough to navigate the rough open ocean.
You can get a pretty good clip going. Surprised how fast this canoe goes.
But keeping it going is hard work.
This is not as easy as it looks. It's starting to burn. It's really starting to burn.
But there's no way anyone could cross hundreds of miles of open ocean in a boat this small. So how did the Polynesians do it? In 1975, the double-hulled voyaging canoe Hokulea set out to prove how it could have been done. Based on sketches from early European explorers, as well as ancient Polynesian petroglyphs, Hokulea made the 2,400-mile trip to Tahiti in 35 days, and without the help of any modern navigational instruments. That answered my question about the kinds of boats they may have used, but there was one more thing that I had to know.
Hugo, how did your ancestors know where they were going out in the open ocean? There's no landmarks.
Well, we have the bird that going and coming.
So they're following the birds because they know that the birds have to eventually land.
Yes.
Right, well now what if you're so far away that there are no birds?
They study the currents. When the sea hits the land, it comes back. So that tells you that land is close.
Swell patterns. The Polynesian navigators could find land by observing the subtle way that ocean swells bounced off distant islands. They also timed their journeys to take advantage of the seasonal wind and sea currents.
They know when the wind is going to blow in the direction they want to go?
Sure.
So they're timing this. This isn't just any time of year. They know specifically when they're going to do it.
Right, so they organize the boat, the crew, the food, and waiting for the wind.
So basically what I'm hearing is that Polynesians were master planners and master navigators. They knew where they were going, and that's how they ended up colonizing all these islands in such an incredibly short period of time.
So the first settlers to Easter Island found a lush paradise, yet this is how the island looks today.
It's kind of a mystery. What happened to all the trees? To answer that question, you have to know something about ancient Rapa Nui culture and these.
I'm looking for an answer to how Easter Island lost all of its trees, and my search has led me to an unlikely source. Easter Island's most famous and unforgettable site, the Moai. Scattered across the island are nearly 1,000 of these towering figures, each one carved from a slab of volcanic rock. But could these icons of the island have really played a part in its deforestation? Well, to find that answer, you need to know something about how and why the Moai were built. I turned again to archaeologist Sergio Rapu. Together, we traveled to the east end of the island, a site named Tongariki. Here, a row of 15 Moai, the largest group on the island, stands as silent witness to Easter Island's past.
This is incredible. What did the Moai represent?
Well, these statues were carved to represent the ancestor of every lineage.
So each family had its own Moai.
That's right.
Each Moai stands on an earthen platform called an ahu. Archaeologists believe the Moai were built between 800 and 1600 AD, and that they once looked out with eyes made of white coral.
Well, why are they all looking away from the ocean?
They're all looking toward the village of the owners.
And there was a village right over here.
That's right. It's the largest village on this island. Over 2,000 houses.
Oh, wow. It's huge.
The Moai stood watch over each clan's village center, the ancestors keeping a watchful eye on their people.
It's like the ancestor figures are facing the village as a way of control, communication, or even guarding.
With a population that once peaked as high as 20,000, the island was divided up between 12 clans, each with its own set of Moai. And while the Moai had spiritual importance to each village, they were also status symbols, with clans competing to erect the biggest, grandest statues.
And this guy is a beast. I mean, how big is that Moai?
Well, this one is really one of the largest that we found on Ahu. It's about 30 feet tall and near to 90 tons.
90 tons. That is incredible. That guy's got a hat on. What's the story with the hat? I mean, why does he have one but none of the others do?
Well, these Moai were carved with the idea of carrying hats. Each one should carry a hat.
Okay, so they all should.
Yeah, the hat really marked the identity of every lineage.
Each lineage has its own unique hat.
That's right.
These top hats alone could weigh 12 tons. So how did the Rapa Nui, a Stone Age culture with no wheels, no metal tools, not even pack animals, manage to construct and erect these monumental statues? How'd they do it? That question leads us to Rano Raraku, an extinct volcano on the eastern tip of the island.
This place is unreal. What were the Rapa Nui doing here?
Well, this is the most important archaeological site of the island. It's the main quarry, 1,000 statues carved out of this place.
Really? 1,000 statues? So even the statues on the other side of the island came from here?
Oh, yes.
Half-built statues still litter the quarry, eerily abandoned and still resting in the cliffsides.
This is a volcanic tuff. It's made out of volcanic ash compact through millions of years.
They're carving them right in place.
Oh, yes, like awakening the moai directly out of the slope. So you can see the head, the body. They'll start carving 2, 3, or even 4 moai at once.
How do they carve them?
The tool they use to make this is it's very simple. It's just, you know, this kind of thing.
A rock.
You see? It's a rock. It's actually a very dense rock. It's called bimmerite basalt. And almost every lineage will have a quarry of this tool.
So it's basically like a rock hammer. And you
It
just,
is a peak.
the harder rock pounds away at the softer rock.
Yeah, but with a sharp edge.
Can you imagine? This is what they used to carve those things. That's incredible.
Sergio estimates that it took a dozen stone carvers just to chip out this one moai.
So what, 12 people using this tool, what, a year?
Or more.
More.
Yeah. But you have to imagine that these people, they were doing it with passion, with pride. This is not the question of being how much I'm going to earn per month, but how much we're going to enjoy seeing this image in front of their village every day.
But carving the moai was just the beginning.
Once you've got it carved, how do you get it out?
Once they finish it, they have the back still attached to the rock with a keel. This is the final stage of the carving.
So this is running along the back of the head.
That's right.
How do you detach it? I mean, that looks precarious.
That keel will be drilled in, replaced by boulders.
So, like, boulders are supporting it.
That's right.
As they knock the rest of that out. That sounds dangerous.
Well, it's a adventurous job.
Once the moai was completely free, came the daunting task of getting it down the embankment and standing it upright. First, the moai was moved downhill on a bed of chipped rocks.
It will be slide down on that slope previously prepared with the debris of the carving.
At the base of the volcano, the moai was raised upright, using ropes, levers, and brute strength.
Okay, so once you've got it stood up, then what do you do?
Then you start to carve the back of the head, the shoulders, and the entire back of the moai.
So this is the last step.
It's ready to go.
Now, the volcanic statue stands completed, an amazing feat on its own. But the Ahus are located across the island, some more than 10 miles away.
Well, once the moai is complete, how do you get it to its final destination?
That is the most important question that many people around the world ask. The people at that time has a Neolithic culture, Stone Age culture. They didn't know the wheel, how you can move a statue of 50, 100 tons from here all the way to the final destinations. It has been our biggest mystery.
And here's where the trees come in. The long-standing theory is that the moai were laid on their backs and rolled across a series of tree trunks. Some historians believe that building moai became such an obsession that to transport them, the Rapa Nui cut down all of the trees on the island, causing their own environmental collapse. But Sergio doesn't agree, and brings me to see a crucial clue that he believes helps prove the log rolling theory is wrong.
What happened here?
Ah, this is one of the moai that fell on the ancient road.
And this one just took a tumble and they left it.
Yeah, it fell down. It was hard to raise again and keep going.
Is this the only one that's been abandoned?
We found 92 statues lying on their face.
92? That's a lot of work to abandon.
The ancient Rapa Nui used 3 main roads to move the moai, and each road is littered with fallen statues, just like these.
This moai is lying on its face. So how a moai that was being transported on his back suddenly turned around and with the face on the ground. And we have no evidence of mark on the road that indicate wood were used. I think these statues were transported in a different way.
And to prove his point, Sergio has set up an experiment. He tells me that his theory of how the moai were moved is based on the Rapa Nui oral tradition of the island.
The moai walked in order to get from the quarry to the final destination of the ahos.
So walked as in moved upright?
Yes, Mike.
For this experiment, Sergio has had a 10-foot scale model cast out of concrete.
Have you ever done this before?
Well, this is the first time.
Need a little muscle?
Well, it will be great help because, you know, this is not the ancient road, so your muscle will really help.
What little I have, I'm certainly happy to contribute to the effort.
Well, it's welcome, my friend.
All right, where do you want to put me?
Right there.
Rope teams tilt the moai. Then, a log latched to the moai's waist inches it forward. The team places stones underneath to keep the moai from sinking into the mud.
All right, I think I'm getting it.
Okay, so far we've gotten it maybe 2 steps. I'm beginning to feel like I might be a part of an archaeological breakthrough moment here. Maybe not.
Whoops.
I'm taking part in an experiment to test if a moai can be walked. So far, it's not looking good.
Whoops.
We find a lot of ancient moai left in place in this very position, which suggests to me that getting it back up is a royal pain in the ass.
With the average moai weighing 14 tons, this may turn out to be an exercise in futility.
At this point, the idea is to try and get it back upright by levering it up a bit, putting rocks in, and eventually getting up to a point where its weight will get it back upright. So, time will tell.
So you see that the transportation of the statues is not an easy job. Yeah.
While raising the moai is proving difficult, this actually supports one part of Sergio's theory, explaining why there are so many abandoned moai on the island, all lying on their faces. And just like those moai, this one isn't moving much further. Fortunately, Sergio has a second moai standing by, so we can continue the experiment.
I don't speak a lick of Rapa Nui, and of course all the directions are in Rapa Nui, so if it falls, it's probably going to be my fault.
Thankfully, Sergio does give me a heads up. He said he encouraged the crew to channel their inner mana and to work more as a team. There's 21 people here trying to move the moai, and look at its size. Imagine how challenging it would have been to try to move one of the moai that is 4 or 5 times as big. It's more of a creep than a walk, but we do manage to move the moai 10 feet.
Well, we were moving the moai at about a foot a minute. That's 60 feet an hour. I think the bottom line is that it worked.
In this experiment, we have seen the whole range of events.
Yeah.
How a moai can fall down, how a moai can walk,
Yeah.
and what level of enthusiasm the people participating can have. This method will use less number of people because here you deal with only part of the weight of the moai.
We may never be able to say for sure that this was how the Rapa Nui transported the moai, but it was certainly a convincing theory. But unlike the idea of rolling the moai, Sergio's method only used a single log, and that raised another question.
What happened to all the trees?
Well, you know, the trees were eliminated by many factors. Humans, there were the climatic conditions that was changing through time.
Sergio, along with many others, think that most of the trees were cut to clear the land for farms to feed the island's booming population. A severe drought, coupled with the island's delicate ecosystem, may have combined to kill off the rest of the trees.
So I think that there were many causes for the deforestation of this island.
It's not the moai's fault. Don't blame the moai.
Sergio's experiment gave me a taste of the Rapa Nui spirit and made me want to know more about the people who built these statues. Who were they, and what was life like back then? In their isolation, the Rapa Nui forged a rich culture that's been passed down as oral tradition. And to learn more, I've been invited to dinner, Rapa Nui style. The evening starts innocently enough, with Manoa and his brother Io preparing an earth oven.
It's called umo?
Umu.
Umu.
Umu pie.
Umu pie.
Umu pie.
That's Rapa Nui for open earth barbecue.
As the sun started to set, I realized the brothers have prepared a slightly more immersive experience than I had anticipated.
This is where the pride goes south. Oh, for me. We're driving
look.
All right.
One,
Public
two,
stripping.
three.
It's a basic rule for travelers and archaeologists alike. When in Rapa Nui, do as the Rapa Nui do. I'm definitely feeling my mana now. The brothers were determined to give me the complete warrior experience.
Warrior man!
We're starting to look like a Rapa Nui. This is a different kind of experience for me. Joining the Rapa Nui fraternity. Some of these symbols that I see these guys painting on their bodies are also symbols that you see in the petroglyphs and kind of reoccurring motifs within Rapa Nui culture.
In Rapa Nui tradition, these symbols often hold a very literal meaning.
This is mata.
It's the eye.
Eye. Yeah.
As an archaeologist, this is the symbol they're giving me because I look at people, I look at things, I use my eyes and my senses to learn and to study. I like
Looking
that.
everybody. Oh hey ho.
Oh hey ho!
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Finish.
What do I say? Feel the power.
Once painted, we put on the native headdress. Next up, time for a lesson in Rapa Nui weapons.
Right.
This name, Paoa, for here, you
This
no
look at the
move.
shoulder.
Yeah, this name is cacao.
Cacao.
Cacao is you in the hay, you know, cacao.
And I see this symbol a lot that shows up in petroglyphs and different types of iconography. The obsidian spear point was the weapon that was used to, then you're done.
Everybody, the painting, the armament, the toki, the base of the mana, you know?
This is the tools of the warrior.
Yeah.
The whole experience raised an important question. The Rapa Nui were an agricultural society, isolated with no enemies from the outside world. So why would a peaceful culture that showed such unity in building the moai have a need for weapons and warrior dress? It was a mystery that would lead me to discover a defining moment in Rapa Nui history. At the peak of their culture, the Rapa Nui's entire civilization was about to be ripped Sometime around the 1600s, at the peak of Rapa Nui civilization, it took a dramatic turn for the worse. Clues to that downfall can be found in the caves that lie below Easter Island's surface. Alicia Ika is a Rapa Nui native and cave guide who's been exploring these underground chambers her entire life. Alicia took me to the caves on the northwest side of the island, just a few miles from Hangaroa. The tour showed me the dark side of Rapa Nui history.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's two skulls.
They're buried together. They were man and wife. These were my ancestors buried there.
Really?
Everywhere were signs that Alicia's forebears had made a home in this cave for what was likely many years.
Cooking fire.
Yeah,
Wow, look at that.
4 stones.
You can see there's actually still some soot on the ceiling from the smoke.
Fire pits, food storage, they even grew their food right here in the cave.
This is an old garden that still remains.
Really, an ancient garden.
Ancient garden.
Right here in the middle of the cave.
Yes.
The whole thing seemed bizarre. The Rapa Nui had an advanced farming culture and large villages. They were sophisticated enough to erect the moai. So why were they living in caves?
War star.
The war.
Yeah.
So there was actually warfare, and they had to seek refuge in the cave.
Yeah, there was a lot of violence, and they have to hide in these caves.
The Rapa Nui had turned on each other, a once thriving culture falling into chaos. What had gone wrong? The answer is an important lesson for the challenges our own planet faces today. Easter Island, once a land of lush vegetation, suffered an ecological disaster. There may be many reasons why the island's trees disappeared, but the impact their loss had on the Rapa Nui is clear. Without trees, there was no wood for making boats, houses, or cooking fires. There were no spears for fishing. As the topsoil eroded, crops began to fail. Food became scarce. The Rapa Nui fought for the remaining resources. The moai, once a stirring symbol of status and pride, were now toppled to the ground by rival warring clans. Famine spread, and some Rapa Nui may have resorted to cannibalism.
So those were dark days for Easter Island.
Very dark. And I can still feel them when I'm sitting right here with you. We never think there was people here suffering, but there was.
Little evidence remains of that dark era. Most of what's known has been passed down only as oral history, but the events of that time are so ingrained in Rapa Nui culture that even today, the people of Easter Island still express their ancestors' suffering.
At one point, things got so desperate on Easter Island that the entire artistic tradition changed. Let me show you. Cesar's a master wood carver, and what he's making is called a kava kava. During the 1700s, they transitioned from building the moai to carving these emaciated individuals, which are essentially cadavers. The interpretation is that things were so bad that they started reflecting their condition in their artwork.
Abuelo. Sí, abuelo.
Your grandfather?
Sí.
Okay, so this tradition is passed down from his grandfather. There are no more original kava kavas on the island. They've been taken by archaeologists and anthropologists and are spread throughout museums across the world, but the tradition is still very much alive.
Rapa Nui art once reflected the determination of the people. Resolute, bold, immovable. Now, after the fall, their spirits crushed, they can only build these slight wooden figures. But just as things were at their worst, the Rapa Nui came up with a unique way to end the years of fighting. On the southern tip of the island lies the remains of Orongo. As the clan wars raged, it was near the ceremonial village, behind a huge crater of the volcano Ranuko, that a bizarre ritual arose. Ancient petroglyphs on the edge of this precipitous cliff tell the story of a contest devised by warring clans to pick a single leader and bring peace to the island. It was called the Cult of the Birdman.
The way the Birdman cult worked was each clan would select one competitor who they'd send to Orongo. And when the competition began, competitors had to climb down this rocky cliff, swim across the straits to that island right there.
On this small island was the nest of the sooty tern, one of the last birds that still migrated to Easter Island after all the trees were gone. The sooty tern was a sacred bird. Its egg, a symbol of power and fertility.
They'd have to find nesting birds and grab an egg. They'd strap the egg to their forehead, swim back across these treacherous straits, ascend this difficult cliff, and with the egg, they would present it to their clan ruler, who then would essentially be king of the island for the next year.
The Birdman ritual was a sign that Rapa Nui culture had found a measure of stability and was beginning to rebuild itself. But incredibly, the worst was yet to come. Just as the Rapa Nui were overcoming years of famine and war, came a new, even more devastating threat.
In 1722, the people of Rapa Nui began to face a challenge maybe even greater than losing all the trees. Because on Easter Sunday of that year, the first European explorers arrived and called this place Easter Island.
The series of European landings brought disaster on a scale worse than anything the already devastated Rapa Nui had experienced. First, smallpox and tuberculosis decimated the population. Then, in the mid-19th century, Peruvian slave traders raided the island, killing or abducting 1,500 Rapa Nui, about half the island's population. A decade later, only 111 Rapa Nui remained. Yet today, the island once again flourishes. So how did they rebound?
How could anyone survive on a treeless rock thousands of miles from the nearest land? One woman, a native, a self-trained archaeologist, thinks she's figured out how.
Finding her sends me on a wild drive along the remote west side of the island. Though she has no formal training in archaeology,
Sonia?
Sonia Ha'oa has co-written 2 scientific papers that have revolutionized what we know about the Rapa Nui.
Is there somebody in the hole?
Yeah. She's a cave lady.
5 years ago, Sonia and her team received a grant to map every archaeological site on the island. Her small crew is mapping a lost history. And in the process, she's made some remarkable discoveries about how people survived after the trees were gone.
So what are we looking at here?
The coastal slopes of Easter Island are peppered with small, seemingly random piles of rocks. Nobody thought much of them until Sonia began her research.
Maybe if you see it, it's not meaning to you, but for us, it's very important. You have all these rocks, and you might not believe, but it's a garden, yeah?
It's a garden?
Sonia realized these were not mere piles of rocks, but rather ancient planting fields.
These are the gardens right here?
Yeah, this is a garden. But you want to plant here.
With the topsoil on the island gone, farmers could no longer raise crops. But the Rapa Nui knew that the rocks were rich with minerals, minerals which could be used to create new soil.
These rocks, when it's wet, it's going to produce you soil. And the decompose of these rocks is very easy.
Really breaks up easily. So that's how you get your soil?
Yeah.
So it looks like the entire island is covered in these huge boulders, but they break down easily into, it looks like a real nutritious soil. It's just decomposing into a nice dirt.
Yeah.
Who would have thunk?
They think.
So what was the pattern that led Sonia and her team to their discovery? Why were the larger boulders always facing the ocean?
You can see, it's a group there, it's a group there, it's a group here, it's a group here.
I am actually seeing a pattern here. You've got boulder, and behind it, on the leeward side, you've got all these small rocks. Look, one example here, boulder, small rocks, boulders, small rocks. And what you're saying is that they would plant on this side of the rock because the boulder is protecting it from the wind?
Yes.
In the face of starvation, the Rapa Nui had adapted and survived.
You cannot leave the island. There is no place to stay. There is nothing. So if you don't have rock gardens, there is no way you can survive.
And it really kind of comes down to
To that?
the rock.
Yeah.
But mapping all of the sites on the island is not a job for the faint of heart.
Today we have about 35,000 of sites.
35,000 sites. You're going to be busy for a little while. Yep, there she is. You're right on it, man. You must be a professional.
But Sonia's research got an unexpected high-tech boost. Pete Kelsey is an expert in creating 3D models using laser scanning.
Laser scanning is basically like a camera. It's a line-of-sight technology. So if the laser can see it, the laser can bounce off of it.
2 years ago, on his way to a job in South America, Pete stopped off in Rapa Nui for a few days vacation and changed Sonia's life.
So I'm going to Rapa Nui. I have all this equipment. It struck me that I must be able to find somebody on the island who'd be interested by it all. Everybody said the same thing. Sonia, I break out some technology, spent about an hour with her, and she actually started to cry.
Tears of joy.
Tears of joy. In that moment, she realized this project, which is basically her life's work, would be possible to finish in her lifetime. With Sonia's efforts, it's very labor-intensive. Handheld GPS, papers and pencils, tape measures, these kinds of things. It takes an excruciating amount of time. Whereas a laser scanner, anything it can see, it can pick up.
A 3D model is then made from the information.
You can visualize, analyze, and simulate.
Sonia's mapping could now be done in weeks rather than years.
We're not touching on anything, we're not walking on anything.
Space-age technology.
Comes to Easter Island.
These advances are helping the Rapa Nui to reconnect with their past. But can Easter Island keep up with the increasing pace of the 21st century? From the Polynesian explorers to the raising of the Moai, through the cataclysm, wars, and European conquerors, the Rapa Nui have survived on Easter Island for over a millennium. Today, the island supports about 4,000 people, but it also faces a whole new set of challenges. In 1986, NASA, needing an emergency landing site for the space shuttle, converted the island's small landing strip into one of the longest runways in South America. Though the shuttle is never needed to land here, the islanders have put the runway to good use. Commercial flights arrive nearly every day, along with cruise ships. Easter Island now hosts 50,000 visitors a year. Tourism is the island's largest source of income, but it's also changing the fabric of the island.
The island is a very fragile island.
Patero Edmonds is Easter Island's first democratically elected mayor.
We welcome development, we welcome tourism, but it has to be a way that wouldn't damage what we got.
But the flood of tourists is straining the island's resources. With just a single generator and one aquifer for the entire island, utilities are being pushed to the limit. And that's just the beginning.
There's a lot of demand. We have lines at the bank, and sometimes we run out of money.
Oh, really?
Changes, so they have to wait for the next plane to come to bring the money. A week and a half ago, we ran out of toilet paper. 15 years ago, we had 3 restaurants. Now we have 31 restaurants.
Wow.
It really can cause a problem.
The flow of tourists, not to mention the ocean weather, are taking their toll on the Moai. Many are rapidly decaying, and a solution for preserving them is yet to be found. Meanwhile, the sudden influx from the outside world is having a more subtle impact on the Rapa Nui people.
Before, we used to watch the horizon and imagine what could be or how the world could be out there. Today, we have it at 35 centimeters.
35 centimeters?
Which is in front of us is our computer screen.
Your computer screen.
The people today are tending to adopt more of what is coming from outside than what it used to be their culture and their codes.
The island is slowly coming to grips with the 21st century. But there is also a growing movement among some Rapa Nui to reconnect with their ancestors' roots. Alicia Ika introduced me to a local woman who wears her commitment to Rapa Nui culture for all to see.
Her name is VERÁ, coming from the sun.
I like the tattoos.
Mana.
Mana.
This is her power.
Okay, so what's this here?
Long.
Ranga. Okay, that's the script of the Rapa Nui. It's like a written language. What about on her forehead?
Moi. Ya vai me moi mana kia o to kutpuna ya o iro I ya ngai me nei rung to aling.
She said the reason why she tattooed her face was because she had a dream where a Moai told her that she will help to keep the culture alive, and since that day she tattooed her face.
Oh, that's cool. So I understand that this is your singing partner.
Yeah, we sing together a chant.
Okay.
To let the spirit know that you are here. Hey, te pita te nuae uranei, o auma kaoiga.
Very good. Beautiful. Thank you very much. I gotta tell you, that was spectacular.
For Miratira, the connection to the Moai and her ancestors is deeply spiritual. But Sonia Ha'oa has created a physical link to the past. This is Sonia's garden. It's a tantalizing glimpse at how the island might once have looked.
It's incredible. So really, this is kind of a snapshot into the past.
Yes.
This is ancient Rapa Nui right here.
Should be like this, all of the island.
For Sonia, Rapa Nui culture, history, and the island's ecosystem are inseparable. And she worries that as the Rapa Nui culture erodes, the islanders will also forget the hard-earned lessons of the island's fragile environment.
We are not learning anything. Anything. Absolutely anything. We have all the cars and houses and all the nice things. The island is fragile. We all know that. Take the tourists, we show the statue, the erosion. It's not giving back. We don't have the communication with the past.
Are you hopeful?
I have a lot of hope in the young people because you have to teach them the ecosystem, the environment. They need the connection of the past with them.
It seems like the story of the Rapa Nui is the story of survival.
Yes. It's a very good sample for everywhere, for everybody.